Excuse me. Excuse me. Well, I don't know if anybody gonna join now. Maybe join later. You can look at the video later on. But I just wanted to share a few things. I think that's what I'll probably be doing from now on. I've done them a couple of times. I'm probably gonna be reading and sharing. Just do like a little vlog or reading and sharing the stuff that I'm reading. I'm gonna be sharing some stuff out of the book called How White Folks Got Rich, The Untold Story of America White Supremacy. This is the book I'm going to be reading out of. But I'm also going to be reading something from off of Wikipedia that's dealing with redlining. Just some information I think that y'all should know. Hold on one second. All right. Yeah, it's just some information that y'all should know. But before I get started with that, just some other stuff that I'm just letting y'all check out that I'm reading also. Bach 2, the United States Birth and Development Decline Regression Before the Leap and Passion of 1607 Present by Dekai Kilimanjaro. I'm saying the elder name wrong, but this is a good book, a good read. All his books, Kemet Press is a good book, so pick this book up. I'm also reading Medical Apartheid, The Dark History of Medical Experiments, Black American from the Colonist Time or Present by Harriet Washington. This is a good book. Also, I may be sharing from later on, but it won't be today, about the experiments of black people for over 400 some years. Documentations of the Tuskegee experiment, the surgical experiment that's dealing with the females, sterilization, brainwash experiments, and by black inmates and mental patients, other brainwashing experiments on black youths on the age 5 and up. But this is also a good book. I'm also reading this at the same time too, Brainwashing, Challenging the Myths of Black Inferiority. So these are some of the books that I'm kind of reading at the same time. Yeah, I'll be reading 3 or 4 books sometimes at the same, not at the same time, but maybe a chapter here, a chapter there. But I just wanted to share some of the books that I'm actually reading now. But back to this book, I wanted to share a few things so we can understand how we got in the situation that we in, or how we in the location that we in, the neighborhood, the so-called ghettos, the so-called neighborhoods, so-called bad neighborhoods, because we always talk about if we try to relocate, is it in a bad neighborhood? And majority of the time when we say bad neighborhood, we think of black communities. So I just wanted to share some information on how we got in these so-called bad neighborhoods or these communities, or how we ended up in the so-called projects. So it was a plan for us to end up in these certain places after we was so-called freed in 1865. But I'm just gonna share some stuff. I'm gonna just go ahead and read and share some stuff. The Homestead Act. I'm gonna start with the Homestead Act. Homestead Act. For 300 years, billions in dollars of Native American lands were granted to whites alone. Only huge blocks of lands were sold to whites for only $1 per acre. Y'all hear that? Federal programs like the Pre-Exempt Act of 1830 and the Mineral Leasing Act of 1920 and many similar state programs were used to confiscate land belonging to the indigenous people to give exclusive to the Caucasians. Ultimately, the landmass of the United States came to compromise 2.4 billion acres. These folks took 2.4 billion acres. They actually gave 2.4 billion acres only at $1. They gave white folks acres of land for $1. The Homestead Act is probably the most rewarding affirmative action program America whites have ever given themselves. Beginning in 1865, to 250 acres of land were given away to white families, many of whom had actually participated in the Southern Confederate Rebellion against America. As many as 643 acres for each white family, and an acre being about a size of a football field, simply snatched from the Indians and given to the whites. The Southern Homestead Act. So first I was talking about the Homestead Act right here. And this, it's basically talking about the land is theirs. We know that they came over here and they took the land from the indigenous people. They claimed the land for themselves. So they took the land and then gave away the land and then or you might as well say, and then had individuals purchase this land for $1. This was only for the whites. This was the Homestead Act. They took land and gave acres of land. They said the acres of land was over a football field long. They was giving them acres of land. The Southern Homestead Act of 1866, I'm going to talk about now. The Southern Homestead Acts of 1866 opened up 46 million acres in 5 southern states, and in 5 states for the millions of ex-slaves and Union veterans, but only about 1,000 black ever received titles to land, which most often consisted of unclear woodland and refuse tracts of the poorest quality. So in 1866, they opened up 46 million acres, and only they say 1,000 black people received titles to land at this point in time, and they was giving away 46 million and only 1,000. But watch after I get through reason what happened with the 1,000 that they gave out of the 46 million acres of land that they so-called gave away. 1,000 black ever received titles to land, which most often consist of uncleared woodland or refuse tracts of the poorest quality. In reality, the United States, in reality, the United States government never intended to give land the foundation of true freedom to any of its former slaves. The plan was for blacks to be given an opportunity to buy 40-acre lots after working on the land for 3 years. And although some ex-slaves were settled on the 40-acre farms, the lands was quickly seized by whites and restored to the former slaveholders. So again, like I was saying, they did give out of the 46 million acres of land, they gave only 1,000 to black folks, but then came back and took the 1,000 that land that they gave to the 1,000 black folks out of 46 million acres of land that they gave. European immigrants were great beneficiaries to this legal land snatch, while the black ex-slaves who had actually worked the land for generations and the Indians who actually owned it were kept far away from the unprecedented giveaway. It is estimated that the wealth of 35 million whites families is based on this and other governments for whites only land grabbers. So I talked about first the Homestead Act. Well, they gave away 2.4 billion acres of land at $1 to white folks, or just gave away acres of land, and the acres of land was more than a football field. This was the Homestead Act. Then I talked about right then the Southern Homestead Act, where they opened up 46 million acres of land, but only gave 1,000 out of the 46 acres of land to black people, and then came back later on and took the 1,000, the acres from the 1,000 of black people that they gave land to. All right, I'm gonna talk about the Farmers Home Administration, the FAA. This is for the for white farmers only. This what it was for. At the end of the legal slavery, blacks was concentrated in agriculture sectors of America. They were more likely than whites to own farms, though they held leased acreage and had poorest quality tracts of land. Despite this reality, the FHA was set up to give loans and subsidize to white farmers to sustain and maintain their operation. To achieve this understated racist purpose, the FHA allowed local whites to operate the programs, and they not the federal government decided who will get those critical benefits. As a result, black-owned farmers unable to compete with the well-subsidized and well-financial white farmers dramatically from about 900,000 in 1930 when the program was established to 682,000 in 1939. Many of the whites used the government money to modernize by buying tractors and evicting black sharecroppers. Congress amended the laws and said that half of the money should go to these tenant farmers, but the white landowners simply stole the payments, claiming if asked that the debt was owed. By 1964, the study found that every program administered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture was rife with racial discrimination, and federal loans was used by local white administrators to retaliate against black farmers for the support of civil rights efforts or the simply voting of attempting to vote. And I'm gonna keep going, but they was just basically talking about how this farmers house administration was set up for white farmers only and not black farmers. And then, if you know, after the Emancipation Proclamation in 1865, before we went through segregation, before we went through the Jim Crow laws, we went through what they call sharecropping. And those was the slaves that left the plantation or was free to leave the so-called plantation at this time, to leave the plantation. They ended up back on the plantation because some didn't have nowhere to go. So y'all basically know the story about sharecropping. They came in and they utilized that if they worked, and after the crops would grow, they would get a certain percentage of the crops. But by the time things got in, you know that shit, they didn't own the land, they didn't own none of the tools, etc., etc. So by the time the crop came in and they was able to make money off of it, it was the ex-slave was already owed everything to the what's name because they didn't own none of the tools, so they actually rented everything out, used everything from the ex-slave master, so they ended up with nothing. They still only worked for free during the sharecropping age. But the government gave these farmers certain money that they didn't need the sharecroppers no more. So they started buying other stuff that they used so they can X out the sharecropper. But they also wanted to exclude some money for those that was working on the farm. But the people that owned the farm took the money from those that were the sharecroppers as well. Just before his by 1964, the study found that every program administrator by the U.S. Department of Agriculture rife with racial discrimination, and federal loans were used by local whites administrated to retaliate against black farmers for their support of the civil rights efforts or for simply voting or attempting to vote. Just before his murder by the United States government, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King shifted his focus from social and political agenda to the acquisition of land. He emerged from the 1966 meeting with the Nation of Islam leader, Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, with those words: "We are suffering domestic colonialism. We must achieve self-determination." In 1968, he spoke in rural Mississippi a church, and put land front and center. He put land front and center because he understood that we didn't own anything. We didn't own any type of land, and the land that was given to me and all the land that was taken from the indigenous people was given to the whites and not to the blacks. So he understood about owning land. So his speech was at the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land through any acts of Congress. Our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and in the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land grants colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided country agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they would merchandise their farms. Not only that, today many of these people receive millions of dollars in federal subsidized not to farm, and they are the very people telling black men that they are to lift himself up by the bootstraps. This is what we are faced with in this reality. Now, when we came to Washington in this poor people campaign, we're coming to get our check. So basically, in this speech, he was just talking about us owning land and how they tell us to lace our bootstraps out and work for it, but they gave their people land. They always had a foot ahead of us because they always giving us something and didn't want to give us nothing. And he was just talking about coming to get our check because we built this country off of free labor. So the government owes the black community over 87 zillion dollars of free labor. So he was just basically saying that they was coming to get their check. Within the days of utterance those of 169 words, Dr. King was murdered by an assassin in the United States government. The federal government has only recently agreed to pay measly $1.2 billion to a small fraction of the black farmers who were denied FHA loans and that white farmers routinely receive, compared with these $6 trillion costs of U.S. war, Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Pakistan. Talk about read about the public housing too, what we call the projects, how we ended up, how majority of the black community ended up in the so-called project, what the project was actually for at first when they built the projects. The U.S. Government created massive racial segregation cities within cities that became infamous, known as Black World as the projects. Many of these developments were cheaply built as temporary housing for recruiting World War II veterans until the GI Bill and other veterans benefited programs allowed the white vets to move into single-family homes in racial exclusion suburbans. Blacks vets facing multiple discriminations were locked in these poorly built and maintenance projects, which ultimately became multi-generational black slums. So the projects was basically built for those for the vets, and these was homes built for the vets at this point in time. This was after after World War II, and when the GI Bill came across, the white vets was moved into suburban areas and nice areas, and the black vets was stayed in the projects because there was no programs at that time for the black vets to move in these areas. So you can see, as I'm reading about the Homestead Act, the Southern Homestead Act, the FHA dealing with the farmers, the public houses, you can see how they was separating us in the different separating us in different areas, how we moved in certain areas, how they acquired all of this massive land that they acquired. They was given these things and we were not given these things. We were denied things. I'm gonna talk about redlining too. Redlining and reverse redlining. The United States redlining is a practice of denying service, either direct or thoroughly select raised prices of residents of certain areas based on racial and ethnic composition of those areas. While the best known example of redlining have involved denial of financial service such as banking and insurance and other healthcare and supermarkets. Um, Although information, discrimination, and segregation has existed in the United States, specific practice called redlining began with the National Housing Act of 1934, which established the Federal Housing Administration, FHA. Racial segregation of discrimination against minorities or minority communities pre-exists these policies. The implication of these federal policies aggravated the decays of minority inner city neighborhoods caused by the withholding of mortgage capital and made it even more difficult for neighborhoods to attract the retained families able to purchase homes. The assumption of redlining resulted in a large increase of residential racial segregation and urban decay of the United States. In 1935, the Federal Home Loan Board, FHLBB, Acts Homeowners Loan Corporations, HOLC, and looks at 239 cities and creating residential security maps indicating a level of security for real estate investments on each surveyed city. On the maps, the newest area of those considered desirable for lending purposes were outlined in green, known as the A. These typical affluent suburbans on the outskirts of the cities. Type B neighborhoods outlined in blue were considered still desirable, where old type C labels decline, outlines in yellow. Type D neighborhoods outlined in red were considered the most risky. Mortgage supporters, these neighborhoods tend to be older districts in the center of the city. Often they were also black neighborhoods. So you can see, I might read a little bit more, but you can see through the redlining was, used to flag the black inner cities or the black communities, denying them different services, denying them mortgage loans, denying insurance, denying health care, and so on. We can see, I'll read something of the effects of the redlining, us not getting those types of benefits that the white people getting in our neighborhoods, that decline our neighborhoods worse than what they were already. The effects. As consequence as redlining, neighborhoods or local banking deemed unfit or investments were left underdeveloped or in despair. You can see right here, if you go in mostly our neighborhoods, you can see that it is undeveloped and is in despair. Attempt to prove these neighborhoods with even relative small scale business virtues were commonly obstructed by financial institutions and continue to label the unwritten as too risky or simply rejected them outright. When existing business collapses, no one were allowed to replace them, often leaving entire blocks empty and crumbles. And we can see that today. We can still go through our neighborhood and see blocks from blocks that is empty and that is crumbling. Consequently, African Americans in those neighborhoods were frequently limited in their access to banking, healthcare, retailing, merchandise, and even grocery. So this was some of the effects of the redlining. I'm gonna share something with reverse redlining, so you can understand what after they did the redlining thing with the maps going in and redlining certain areas. The redlining communities, you already know, was the black communities where we was denied certain things. Let's go to reverse redlining so y'all get understanding of what reverse redlining is. Yeah, I had it on here a while ago. Okay. Reverse redlining occurs when a lender of insurance particularly targeting minority consumers, not to deny them loans or insurance, but to charge them more than would be changed to similar situation white consumers. We still see that today. We can go get the same type of loan, no matter what the loan is, and we'll be charged more interest. We'll be charged more to pay back than than anybody else, and they do these things. They do this for a reason. Where I left off, specifically marketing the most expensive oneness loan products. These communities had largely been ignored by mostly lenders just a couple of decades earlier. This was I was talking about the redlining. In the 2000s, some financial institutions considered black communities a suitable and subprime mortgage. Wells Fargo partnered with churches. Check this out. Wells Fargo, and I know a lot of us bank with Wells Fargo and certain things like that. But look up Wells Fargo Bank. See who owned Wells Fargo. See how Wells Fargo, the owners got their money. You will see how they tied into owning slaves, writing policies for own slaves, and et cetera, et cetera. A lot of these banks got their money off the backs of slavery. But check Wells Fargo out when you get a chance. But look, check this. Wells Fargo partner with churches in the black community where the pastors will deliver wealthy building seminars in their sermons, and the banks will make a donation to the church in return for every new mortgage application. Working class blacks wanted a part in the nation home owning trends instead of contributing to home ownerships and community process. Predator lending practice through reverse redlining strip. Hold on. All right, working class blacks. Man, I lost my place. Okay, working class blacks wanted a part of the nation home owning trends instead of contributing to the home ownership, the community progress. Predators leading practice through reverse redlining strip the equity homeowner struggles to build and drain the wealth of those communities for the enrichment of financial firms. The growth subprime leaning high cost loans to borrow with flaws on their credit records. Prior to 2008 financial crisis, couples were growing law enforcement active in those areas, clearly show a surge in a range of manipulating practices. Not all subprime loans were predatory, but virtually a predatory loan was subprime. Subprime loans certainly benefited high-risk borrowers who would not qualify for conventional prime loans. Predator loans, however, changed unreasonable high rates and fees to compare to the rich, trapping homeowners in unaffordable debts and often costing them their homes and life savings. So you can see right there through the reverse, this was the reverse redlining. You know what I'm saying? At first redlining, we was denied loans, mortgage loans. We was denied health care, insurance, and the reverse was named. They came later on and they let us get loans, they let us get insurance, but charge us a crazy amount, an amount that they knew that we couldn't pay, which is still going on today. If you go get a mortgage loan, a loan, some type of loan today, you will see that our interest rates are higher and we have to pay back more. And if you look and see, as the homeowners, we're losing our homes left and right because we can't pay for it. And I just wanted to highlight that part about Wells Fargo. You know what I'm saying? Wells Fargo Bank, like I say, most of us bank at Wells Fargo and some of these other banks, and but do some information. I put up some information a while back on a bunch of institutions that made money off the back of slavery. So check out Wells Fargo Bank and how they got how they acquired their wealth. But I would just wanted to highlight where you had Wells Fargo Bank partner with a bunch of churches, and they partnered with a bunch of black churches, and they partnered with a bunch of black churches and told the black churches that they will give them money if the pastor would teach wealth building in different seminars to get the black congregation to fill out mortgage applications. And the agenda was behind that was to get us to fill out these applications uh, so we can become homeowners, because we were denied of so much different things, land, mortgage loans, etc., etc. So they filled out the application, got these loans, but these loans was to build the wealth, the wealth for these other financial companies. And through by them doing that, Wells Fargo Bank doing that and coming and targeting the black communities and getting us to, because we always falling for something, that a lot of people, couldn't afford it and got into debt. You know what I'm saying? Caused them to lose their homes and some of them to lose their life savings. So I just wanted to show, share a few things out of this book and off of here. How we are where we at, why we don't own any land. You know what I'm saying? How we are always at the back and they always got a foot ahead of us. Through the Homestead Act, them are giving out, as I read earlier, them giving out land, them giving out 2.6 million acres of land at $1 to the white folks. Then giving away 4.6 million acres of land later on, and only 1,000 black folks doing the Homestead, Southern Homestead Act in 1866 acquired land out of the 46 million acres of land, 46 acres of land that they gave away, and then came back and took the land away from the thousand people that they awarded awarded land to. They came back and took it. But 1,000 out of 46, then you come back and take it. Then just talking about the Farmers Act, talked about the Farmers Act a little bit, and shared a little bit about the sharecropping. Sharecropping. I'm not gonna go back into the sharecropping, but I explained that a little bit about sharecropping. But that came after we left the plantation in 1864, 1863, and then officially free in 1865 after the Civil War. But we had slaves go back on the plantation after that because they had no place to go. But y'all mean most of y'all know about sharecropping, but how a lot of money was set up for the farmers, and then they pushed the sharecroppers out. And took some of the money that was supposed to have been awarded, and talked about, touched on Martin Luther King a little bit with the same thing with us owning land. You know what I'm saying? And them going to Washington to try to get our check. And like I said, this country was built off the back of our ancestors. Free labor, which we are owed 87, they say $87 zillion. Also I talked about redlining. We talked about redlining, so about redlining. Redlining was we talked about the projects. Talked about how most of us come from the projects, how the black community ended up in the project. What the project was actually for the veterans that came out of World War II. But then after the GI Bill, the white veterans, they placed them in a suburban area, and then the black veterans stayed in the housing projects, the projects. So this is where we got into the projects. The reverse lining You know, redlining, talk about the redlining. Us being denied certain things also, you know what I'm saying? Insurance, us denying loans, mortgage loans to try to get ahead, to try to buy land, try to buy homes. And then later on, reverse redlining. Reverse redlining, we talked about reverse redlining. We talked about how later on they came on and they stopped denying us and started giving us loans, mortgage loans, uh, health care, insurance, but charged us at a highest interest rate than anybody else. Someone else can go in that does not look like us, get the same loan, but they will have to pay more than what they'll have to pay. Talked about Will Fargo also in the time going and targeting the black churches. Will Fargo Bank targeting the black communities, the black churches, targeting the black churches, and they had an agenda. You know, and they targeted black churches to get the preachers to try to teach seminars on wealth, to get them to sign up for the applications, for these subprime loans. And these subprime loans, you know what I'm saying, they charge us at the highest interest rate, and made other financial firms as well as the banks rich, and put us in a financial debt where we lost our homes, you know, and we lost our life savings. So I just wanted to share some information, you know, reading and sharing. This is, I think, my fourth time sharing information. I think I just keep reading and sharing because a lot of things that's going on in our community, and we don't know how we got in this situation. And the only way we're able to get out of this situation, family, is to go back and learn how we got in this situation. We can't fix the situation if we don't know how we got in this situation. So once we unlearn and relearn, then we can set goals on how to heal ourselves and how to repair our communities, and how we can get at the head of the race, hence at the last of the race. So there has been many obstacles placed in our way for us to succeed. So now we have to go back and re-educate ourselves. It's no excuse for us not to go back and re-educate ourselves. Our families at the time didn't have the resources that we have, but we have the resources now. We can order books offline. I showed a couple of books that I'm actually reading now. You know, and my mom, my dad, my grandmother, my great-great-grandmother, and etc., they wasn't privy to this type of information. And at one point in time, it was illegal in the United States for black folks to read and write. It was illegal to read and write. So it's no excuses now for us to not know how to read and write. And a lot of us is not reading. And we have access of information at our fingertips. We can order books off of Amazon.com, Books of Millions, other bookstore outlets. You have bookstores in numerous states, black-owned bookstores, preferably. If you're gonna check out the internet, we have access to the internet, which our parents didn't have access to the internet. So we have access to the internet. So we have information at our fingertips. So no more. So it's no excuses for us to be in a situation that we in, family. It's no excuses for us to be illiterate on a lot of things that's going on in our community. So I just charge y'all to unlearn and relearn, re-educate yourself so you can get yourself and your family out of these situations. Understand about these things that were put in our way for us not to succeed. And for those that's just logging in to check out things, again, you can go back and look at the video. I just shared a few things in the books and just talking about the Homestead Act, the Southern Homestead Acts, the projects, the housing projects, how we came about, how we ended up in the project, how we didn't receive land, we were denied land, land was given away for free to the whites, and et cetera, et cetera. Then later on, land was given to out of 46 million, 1,000 of it was given, and then it was taken. Then it was taken away. Redlining, understanding what redlining, denying of certain loans, mortgage loans, insurance, healthcare, reverse headline, reverse redlining, etc. So just go back and check it out. Then do your own research on the things that on the topics that I talked about. Like I said, this is my fourth time reading and sharing. I think I'll just continue on doing it, just reading and sharing, because I like to read and I like to share information. And again, the only way we can get ourselves out of the situation if we learn. You know, if we learn how we got in a situation. If we learn how we got in a situation, then we can correct our situations to get. I mean, we can correct our situations. So thank you all for those tuning in. Peace.